Oh, excuse me.
Yes?
I'm trying to find a Turbo Man doll.
Me too.
Do you have any more in the back? What? I see nothing. What did I say?
These guys are looking for a Turbo Man?
A Turbo Man doll, yes.
They're looking for Turbo Man.
Hey, everybody! These two are looking for a Turbo Man!
Shut up, man.
Now, what's so funny?
Where have you guys been? Turbo Man's only the hottest selling Christmas toy ever. You know what? We got plenty of Turbo Man's faithful saber-tooth tiger booster.
Where's your Christmas spirit? That's better. Now, there must be a Turbo Man around here somewhere.
The last one just left. Some lady had it on layaway.
A lady? What lady?
Just short, with a fur coat. Fur
coat.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, buddy.
Give me this.
Hey!
This is war.
Yeah!
Cool.
Oh, poor baby.
Turbo Man.
Ha! Hey, lady! Hey, hold it! Wait! Wait, lady! I need the Turbo Man!
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Sounds like a job. Verbal dioramas. Watches all the movies from comedy to drama. From the top, roll the sound. And don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtakes. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 324, Jingle All the Way. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. They got a Turbo Man for Johnny months ago. It's nestled safely under our tree. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, whether you're a brand new listener, whether you're a regular returning listener, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this podcast. I'm so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Jingle All the Way. We are fully in, going on the run up to Christmas now. And I love doing Christmas movies on this podcast because it just genuinely makes me start to feel quite festive, even though I am recording this in November, but that's how podcasting works. Huge thank you if you are a regular returning listener. Thank you for coming back to this podcast, for continuing to listen and support this podcast. This podcast will be 7 years old in February, a fact that constantly blows my mind. And it's been going now for, 324 episodes. So sometimes I wonder, how am I actually doing this? But I am doing this. So I guess I'm just going to carry on doing this. But however many episodes of this podcast you've listened to, even if this is your first, thank you so much for your support, because listening to a podcast is supporting a podcast. And it really genuinely does mean so much. I'm just going to jump straight in because in the decades since Jingle All the Way came out, it may have not set the box office alight or charmed critics at the time, but it hasn't faded into obscurity. On the contrary, its popularity seems to grow every year, and it's now widely regarded as a holiday classic, loved by millennials and loved by the people who made it. You're my number one listener. Here's the trailer for Jingle All the Way.
Every holiday season, there's one toy everyone has to have.
I want the Turbo Man action figure with the arms and legs that move, and the rock and roaring jetpack, and the boomerang shooter.
Getting it is every child's dream.
Whoever doesn't can be a real loser.
Finding it
You got the doll, right?
is this father's nightmare.
I'll get that toy. I promise.
Whoa! Nothing like waiting until the last minute, Howard, sir.
Especially on Christmas Eve.
Turbo Man, you're mine!
They're all gone.
These two are looking for a Turbo Man.
Where's your Christmas spirit?
The last one just left.
Now, it's two fathers,
This is war.
one mission,
Oh, poor baby.
and every man for himself.
I'm thinking maybe, we could join up as a team. Like Starsky and Hutch.
We're in late delivery of Turbo Man at Toy Works. Let's go.
Is there a problem, officer?
You can never do too much to make a child's Christmas magical.
Hey, buddy.
From the director of Mrs. Doubtfire,
You want a Turbo Man for Christmas?
Forget it. I'm not gonna sit in your lap.
Tony, show him.
That was taken this morning.
and from the director of The Flintstones.
Don't open that up. No, no, no.
Of course, there's some assembly required.
You know what you guys are? Nothing but a bunch of sleazy con men in red suits.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sinbad,
I work for the post office and I'm unstable. Tell him.
This man is totally insane.
Thank you.
Christmas comes but once a year.
Jingle All the Way.
You picked the wrong day.
Mattress salesman Howard Langston is great at his job at providing for his family, but not so great as a present husband and father. After he misses his son Jamie's karate grading, he asks him how he can make it up to him. All Jamie wants for Christmas is a Turbo Man action figure, the hottest toy of the year. Unfortunately for Howard, his wife asked him to pick one up weeks ago, and it's now Christmas Eve and every store is sold out. Howard must spend the day scrambling from store to store in desperate search of one, crossing paths with the equally hapless Myron, a conspiracy theorist postal worker, whose son also wants a Turbo Man more than anything. Let's run through the cast. We have Arnold Schwarzenegger as Howard Langston, Sinbad as Myron Larabi, Phil Hartman as Ted Moulton, Rita Wilson as Liz Langston, Jake Lloyd as Jamie Langston, Robert Conrad as Officer Hummel, Martin Mull as the KQRS DJ, Jim Belushi as Maul Santa, Danny Woodburn as Tony the Elf, and Paul White as Giant Santa. Jingle All the Way was written by Randy Cornfield and was directed by Brian Levant. Every year, since the 50s, there has been a toy that children have wanted more than anything else. From Barbie in 1959 to the Easy Bake Oven in 1963, G.I. Joe in 1970, and the Rubik's Cube in 1980, in every generation, one toy is given the responsibility to be the one thing each child can't live without. But as the decades went on, the effects of TV advertising ramped up materialistic desires, and consumerism started to infiltrate everyday family homes. People wanted more and more, and expected to find more and more. In late 1983, it hit fever pitch when violence broke out in cities and towns across the US. People fought each other, would hit, shove, and trample each other. Some even used baseball bats to attack and defend themselves. The riots lasted for months, with thousands of people left bruised, battered, some hospitalised, and most egregiously, many hundreds without their Cabbage Patch toy kids. The Cabbage Patch riots stemmed from toy stores only having several hundred dolls and thousands of customers descending on them to snag the coveted toys for Christmas. Many left empty-handed and many resorted to violence. By early 1984, supply kept up with demand and the violence declined. Now, no one really knew why the Cabbage Patch riots happened, other than parent company Colico appealing to a huge number of children between 6 and 12 that they could adopt their own doll, and this craze foreshadowed similar holiday toy crazes, and now, of course, Black Friday sales. But in the 80s, the internet wasn't a thing, and in the 90s, it was in its infancy. And you couldn't check the stock in stores. You had to drive to a shop to pick up the latest craze that your kids were desperate for. The Cabbage Patch riots were extreme, and they weren't isolated either. In 1993, the same thing happened again, this time with Power Rangers. A year later, in 1994, the manufacturer enlisted 11 additional factories and shipped 10 times the number of Power Ranger toys that it did at Christmas 1993. And yet the toys were so scarce, parents were setting up tents to camp outside of stores, driving across state lines to get to stores with stock, calling Bandai 700 times a week and sending them 300 letters a week, trying to locate the toys. They also bribed sales assistants hundreds of dollars to save certain figures. Michael Goldstein, the then CEO of Toys R Us, called it the biggest phenomenon we have ever seen in the toy business. You could buy Power Rangers clothing, watches and lunchboxes, but you couldn't buy the action figures, with the white and pink Rangers the most elusive, with black market sellers, and possibly also a warehouse full of mall Santas, offering pink Rangers, which usually retailed at $13 for over $50. To put it into figures, Power Rangers' share of the market for action figures was $1 billion in 1994. Cabbage Patch dolls was $550 million in 1984, while Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was $450 million in 1990. The only other toy to sell as well as Power Rangers was Barbie, and she'd been doing it for over 30 years at that point. Trying to get his oldest son, also called Jamie, a red or green Power Ranger, was Randy Cornfield, and he was struggling with the long queues for toy stores, the sold-out signs, and hearing other parents going to great lengths to get these toys, which sparked an idea for him to write a screenplay. Before he wrote it, he pitched it to Nickelodeon Movies, which was just getting started at the time and they'd passed, so he decided to write it on spec. The original script was darker in tone. Turbo Man was called Turbo Ton, and the third act took place at a Turbo Man factory, with the father having to go up against a full-sized robotic Turbo Man. Cornfield, who was a story analyst at 20th Century Fox at the time, used a pseudonym, Ed McQueen, for the original draft. When it was finished, a few people responded positively, so he passed it to a couple of agents, one of whom was film producer Warren Zeed, who would go on to produce American Pie and Final Destination, and he started shopping the script around. That script would end up in the lap of Chris Columbus, no stranger to family-based comedic Christmas movies like Home Alone and Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. Columbus had experienced his own toy craze in 1995 when he tried desperately to find a Buzz Lightyear action figure from Toy Story. He performed uncredited rewrites on Cornfield's script, changing the ending to the Christmas parade ending, which then attracted executives at 20th Century Fox, who at that point didn't know the writer of the script actually worked for them. They soon found out that Ed McQueen was actually Randy Cornfield. Meanwhile, a remake of Planet of the Apes had been being developed by 20th Century Fox since 1988, and the project, titled Return of the Apes, was due to star Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had signed on in March 1994 alongside Chris Columbus, who joined the project as a director in early 1995. Columbus brought on board Sam Hamm to rewrite the script. The script was given a mixed reception by the studio, and Columbus then jumped ship to join Jingle All the Way instead, which he would produce under his brand new production company, 1492 Pictures, named after the year that the other Christopher Columbus reached the Americas. With Return of the Apes in limbo, Arnold Schwarzenegger would go off to make Eraser, but he would also be vitally important to Jingle All the Way getting a green light. He would eventually abandon Return of the Apes, which would become Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, starring Mark Wahlberg. Now, of course, Schwarzenegger was no stranger to comedies because he'd already flexed his comedic muscles with Twins in 1988 and Kindergarten Cop in 1990, and in 1994 had reunited with his Twins co-star Danny DeVito for Junior. That is relevant to this too. But Randy Cornfield never envisaged Howard Langston as a big, muscular guy. He saw him as more of a Steve Martin type. At one time, Daniel Stern was considered for the role, until Arnie got involved. Schwarzenegger loved doing action movies and he loved doing comedies, and he wanted to alternate one and the other. So when the Jingle All the Way script landed with him, he loved the idea of playing an everyday guy, a husband and a father, as well as having the action and the comedy. His physique wouldn't only come in handy for the action parts, but also for when Howard Langston becomes Turbo Man. To play opposite Arnie, the filmmakers got in touch with Danny DeVito, with the idea that both Schwarzenegger and DeVito would agree to star in the movie, with DeVito as Myron, the postal worker, also trying to find his child Turbo Man. But while Schwarzenegger was interested, DeVito wasn't. The movie was greenlit purely on Schwarzenegger's casting, which also netted him a $20 million paycheck. His agent recommended comedian Sinbad for the Myron role, and for his part, Sinbad wasn't the only actor who ended up in the film to audition for Myron. Both Phil Hartman and Jim Belushi tried out for it, but Sinbad was a similar size to Schwarzenegger. Hartman would end up in the role of sneezy neighbour Ted, and Belushi as the mall Santa, and this would be Hartman's last movie released before his tragic, untimely death the following year. Sinbad ordered a mailman outfit for his audition, turned up for the audition, and everyone else was also wearing a mailman outfit. He was tired of auditioning at the time, and when he was called in, the script fell out of his hands and went everywhere. He was so agitated that he flew off the handle, jumped on the table, chastised Schwarzenegger, did the lines and left. He was certain that he'd fudged the audition, but they loved his off-the-cuff remarks, and he got the part based on that supposed terrible audition. It turns out that Sinbad wouldn't use much in the way of the script in the movie either. He would improv most of his scenes, and Schwarzenegger would improv with him in those scenes. In 1995, Brian Levant was coming off of The Flintstones, which had been a huge hit the year prior. I adore that movie. Check out episode 253 on The Flintstones. Levant was a Flintstones mega fan, but he was also a mega fan of toys in general, so much so that he wrote a book in 2022 called My Life and Toys. And The Flintstones being such a mega hit led to him becoming a director people wanted to work with. But he wanted to choose his next movie carefully. As soon as he was sent the Jingle All the Way script in February 1996, with the idea of a toy at the centre, he was all about saying yes, mostly because he could then add the toy to his own personal toy collection, which is huge, by the way, with a collection of Turbo Man dolls lining a shelf in his office, and he would make that dream a reality, not only the toy shelf, but also the movie. He helped design Turbo Man, alongside storyboard artist Daryl Henley and concept designer Tim Flattery, but the issue was that Marvel and DC kind of had superhero designs licked, and every colour combination and style had already been used for someone else. They knew they wanted campy and tongue-in-cheek, but they were up against another issue, the issue the movie itself would also battle with, and that was time. Because this was a Christmas movie, and so it had to be ready by the end of 1996, which would mean everything had to come together, pre-production, production and post-production, in less than a year, in 9 months actually, which would mean not very much time to design Turbo Man or to make toys, but more on that later. The fact that Turbo Man still looks a little like Iron Man is acknowledged by Brian Levant, and it's a marvel, excuse the pun, that Marvel actually never sued. But at the time, Iron Man wasn't really the top-tier hero that he is nowadays. Randy Cornfield's script was always set in Minneapolis, and he had the Mall of America in mind as the setting. He'd never been, but he'd heard all about the largest mall in the US and in the Western Hemisphere. It's only the 12th largest in the world, though. The largest, in Tehran, is over 3.5 times bigger. Anyway, the production wanted a typical wintry Midwestern town, and despite also looking at Milwaukee and Chicago, Schwarzenegger pushed for filming on location in the twin cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the Minnesota Film and TV Board went above and beyond to accommodate filming, as production tax incentives didn't exist in the 90s. There was another reason to shoot in Minnesota. They were planning to film in May of 1996, which is technically spring, but Minnesota winters tended to last longer than any other state, and they wanted a Christmas movie to look Christmassy, but they still had to fake the snow. The movie filmed on location in the Twin Cities, including shops at Linden Hills, homes in Edina, the famous Mickey's Diner in St. Paul's, Nicollet Island and the Mall of America over 5 weeks, decking out empty stores with Christmas decorations. Filming locations received lucrative per-day payments from the studio, allowing a school in Falcon Heights to purchase brand new computer equipment. They shot the house scenes on Bruce Place in Edina, Minnesota, in a home owned by the McCary family. Both interiors and exteriors were shot at the house, which they used from 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Diane McCary refused to allow Arnold Schwarzenegger to smoke cigars in the house. Just imagine that story at parties. Yes, I said no to Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was, of course, a real reindeer on set, but there was also an incredibly convincing animatronic made by Animated Engineering, which was head, neck and shoulders only, and puppeteered by Mecky Hewson and Dave Nelson. Filming at the Mall of America was hectic. Crowds of people turned up knowing Arnold Schwarzenegger was filming, and his stunt double Peter Kent, who also doubled for him for most of his movies, including Terminator 2, would be the one jumping into ball pits and running up and down escalators. There was no time to rehearse the Santa fight, and Schwarzenegger did his own stunts on that, with a fight scene put together on the day by stunt coordinator Joel Kramer. The city's Holly Dazzle Parade, which are daily parades that take place in the evenings from the day after Thanksgiving until a couple of days before Christmas, couldn't be used, mostly because they didn't take place in May. The event was renamed the Wintertainment Parade for the movie, and for practical reasons they couldn't film it on location on 2nd Avenue, nor could they film it in the evening. The parade was filmed at the Universal Studios backlot in California on the New York street set, designed to resemble 2nd Avenue, in July 1996. It took 3 weeks to film, with 1,500 extras, and in a stark contrast to the Minnesota weather, it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit in California. That's 43 degrees Celsius. People in winter coats and costumes were passing out, and even Schwarzenegger, who had a cooling system in the Turbo Man outfit, sort of similar to the one he'd have for Mr. Freeze just after this, was still struggling with the extreme heat. I just feel sorry for the guy in the Booster costume. No one liked Booster. The parade itself, despite being filmed in the middle of summer with blazing sunshine, had custom floats, including the one for Turbo Man himself, which was 46 feet long. 10,000 pounds of red and gold confetti was shot over the streets, and some extras were costumed as the local news team, and the Pasadena City College Marching Band performed as the Turbo Man Band. The All Santa Marching Band consisted of members of the UCLA Marching Band. A news helicopter was dispatched to cover the event for the evening news. And as Howard takes to the skies as Turbo Man, those flying scenes were coordinated by John G. Bellew, who previously worked on The Rocketeer, which is an incredible movie, by the way, if you've not seen it, and also Bob Harmon, who worked on the flying scenes for Superman. So although this movie gets a lot of flack for not having great visual effects, there were some really talented people who were working behind the scenes. And speaking of a Superman, it's time to segue into the obligatory Keanu reference of this episode. And if you don't know what that is, if you are new here, this is where I try and link every movie that I feature with Keanu Reeves for no reason other than he is the best of men and he would never forget to buy his son a Turbo Man doll. And this is a really interesting connection, actually. And it comes via Norm Coleman, who was the mayor of St. Paul in 1996. And he actually commented on the production filming in St. Paul. Quote, "When Keanu Reeves was here, a bus came in from Wisconsin, and Arnold is bigger than Keanu." Now, I don't have any context to what the quote actually means or what he was talking about, but that would be for when Keanu Reeves was filming for his movie Feeling Minnesota, the previous year in the spring of 1995. And I guess when you live in Minneapolis or St. Paul, you just get used to celebrities just coming by and filming movies in your area. And as I mentioned, this was a quick production, with Schwarzenegger signing on in February 1996, and the movie needed to be ready and released in November 1996. There was only 6 months to sort out any merchandise, and anyone who knows anything about the toy industry knows that's not enough time. Only 200,000 official Turbo Man dolls were made for the movie's release. a 13.5-inch replica talking Turbo Man, and a Turbo Man Time Racer car. But while the toys were released in time for Christmas 1996, it was far from the toy on everyone's lips that year. In a bizarre twist of fate, Christmas 1996's most popular toy wasn't Turbo Man, but the exact scenes in the movie were again replicated in real life. At the time this movie was out in cinemas for Tickle Me Elmo. So Tickle Me Elmo came out in July 1996 and sold steadily but not crazily. 400,000 units were ordered and Elmo was reduced for Black Friday. And by Thanksgiving 1996, Tickle Me Elmo had sold out due to the discounts. Manufacturer Tyco quickly ordered 600,000 more for the Christmas season, but they vastly underpredicted what would happen when Rosie O'Donnell featured the toy on her chat show, a show aimed at stay-at-home mothers with preschool children who loved Elmo. So when you couldn't get Tickle Me Elmo, the scarcity caused a frenzy, with people arrested for fighting over the few remaining dolls, black market sales, and parents running after delivery trucks. A clerk at Walmart in Canada was trampled by shoppers desperate to get one of the 300 Tickle Me Elmos he was unboxing to stock on store shelves. He suffered a concussion, a broken rib, and injuries to his back, jaw, and knee. Now, of course, eBay was founded the year prior, but at the time, internet connections were still dial-up. I remember that noise. I'm sure many people listening remember that noise too. So instead, newspaper ads were listed selling $30 Elmo dolls for $1,000 or best offer. A charity auction with Tickle Me Elmo as the main prize raised $18,500, with the winner getting one of the prize dolls. But despite Turbo Man not getting his day in 1996, his merchandise would get its day though, with Funko releasing a reproduction of the 1996 Turbo Man action figure in 2021, a fully posable 13.5-inch talking Turbo Man featuring electronic lights and sounds and 3 action accessories, batteries not included. And just like Howard and Myron discovered in the film, getting your hands on Turbo Man in real life also proved difficult, with low stock and action figures appearing on eBay for hundreds of dollars. Even now, as I'm recording this episode, Turbo Man is out of stock at Walmart online. However, I suspect that has something to do with me prepping this episode in and around Black Friday. But the fact Turbo Man is still selling out surely is testament to the ongoing audience love for this movie. Jingle All the Way had its premiere at where else but the Mall of America, with 20,000 local people in attendance and appearances from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who pushed for the premiere in the mall. He even said, "I'll be back," on his last day filming in Minneapolis, and that was him keeping his promise. The movie was released wide on the 22nd of November 1996, opening alongside Star Trek First Contact and 101 Dalmatians. It would open at 4th behind Star Trek First Contact, Space Jam and Ransom. It would drop to 5th in its second week and would stay in the top 10 for 5 weeks. On its $60 million budget, $20 million of which was Arnie's salary, Jingle All the Way would gross $60.6 million domestically and $69.2 million internationally, for a total worldwide gross of $129.9 million. So it made the studio money, but not quite the money expected from a mid-90s Arnie Christmas comedy. It currently has a 20% at Rotten Tomatoes, with a consensus of Arnold Schwarzenegger tries his best, but Jingle All the Way suffers from an uneven tone, shifting wildly from would-be satire on materialism to an antic slapstick yuckfest. It was given a glowing review by Jeff Strickler from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, a panning review by Emmanuel Levy in Variety, and a middling review by Roger Ebert. But mostly it was critically panned for being highly formulaic, lacking in plot, and the slapstick tone. A standalone direct-to-DVD sequel, Jingle All the Way 2, was released in December 2014, directed by Alex Sam. The film has a similar plot to the original, but otherwise is not connected and has none of the original cast or characters. The lead role in the movie would instead be played by Larry the Cable Guy. In March 2001, Detroit publishing firm Murray Hill Publications filed and won a $19 million lawsuit against 20th Century Fox after a jury in Michigan agreed that the movie studio had stolen the script for Jingle All the Way and that it bore a striking resemblance to Could This Be Christmas, written by high school teacher Brian Webster, who had sold the script to Murray Hill. Webster's screenplay was pitched to several movie studios, including 20th Century Fox in 1993, without finding any interest. Soon after, 20th Century Fox purchased the rights to Jingle All the Way. Soon after awarding $19 million, though, the judge later reduced the amount to $1.5 million. In March 2004, the Court of Appeal overturned the verdict, deciding instead that Randy Cornfield's Jingle All the Way script was an original work and not based on Could This Be Christmas. The court determined that Jingle All the Way was based on a treatment that was completed long before anyone at Fox had access to the script for Could This Be Christmas, and the original trial judge had not informed the jury that neither the writer of Jingle All the Way nor anyone else at Fox could have seen the plaintiff's script before the treatment for Jingle All the Way was completed. I don't want to be the person that has to return $1.5 million, but there you go. Jingle All the Way may not be the #1 greatest Christmas movie in the world, because that's The Muppet Christmas Carol. But what it is a stark takedown of the capitalist machine that is Christmas, wrapped in a neat, sleek Austrian action hero that we all know and love, with a who's who of supported cast, all about how society is only ever fulfilled by consumerism, and every year the cycle continues again. In its rawest form, it's a satire of the darkness of Christmas. And this was Randy Cornfield's original idea. Not Sinbad pretending he had a bomb wrapped in Christmas paper that blows up in one police officer's face. The idea that a father has to buy his son's love at Christmas. Presents over presents, as in gifts over being there in person. As if that somehow young Jake Lloyd isn't going to need years of therapy as a grown man, which he probably did anyway, thanks to Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. Because if you're wondering, yes, that is Anakin Skywalker, except much younger. It's likely that the Chris Columbus rewrite of the script added those wacky Home Alone-esque elements, such as Arnie breaking into his neighbour's house to steal the toy from under the tree and hijinks ensues. It feels very Chris Columbus. But despite the darkness that's always lurking, this movie is more prescient than anyone really gives it credit for. It may not have predicted the melees at toy stores across the world at the festive period. Although, I'm certain this is more of an American thing because I've never seen parents fighting in an Argos. That is a very British reference. But it certainly shines a light on modern entitlement for the biggest and most expensive gifts, as well as the merchandising of everything surrounding a big movie or TV show. Again, this isn't new. I remember breakfast cereals in the 90s advertising things like Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles or Power Rangers. But the idea that kids can't escape this messaging. So much so, I know here in the UK, it's against the law for ads promoting unhealthy food for children to be shown during the day. But time-strapped parents, often working multiple jobs, will do anything to keep their children happy. I get it. At Christmas, I'll buy my nieces and nephews whatever they want. You never want a child to go without. But the sheer entitlement of shoppers, who will literally beat up other people to get at something, just speaks to the pressures of raising children. Pressures that only ever get worse year after year, and keeping up with the Joneses. It's an effective satire about how commercial Christmas has become. Howard Langston is a privileged man working a good job and has the money to be able to buy his son whatever he wants. Myron isn't as well developed, but it's clear he doesn't have the same amount of wealth and privilege. He's also a black man, which I think is relevant to how systemic racism can make people of colour work longer hours for less money. Myron isn't a particularly good guy. He does attempt to endanger a young child after all, and yet he gets the toy at the end. But he also probably ends up in jail, so his child may get the doll, but his child is going to miss out on a father. Myron understands the consumerist system more than Howard because he went to junior college for a semester and studied psychology. Jamie doesn't get the doll, but, fingers crossed we hope, gets a loving, present father. Jamie doesn't need Turbo Man because he has his dad. Except the movie phrases it as he doesn't need Turbo Man because he has the real Turbo Man at home. Just ignore the fact that neither Howard's wife or son recognise his face under a clear yellow visor, nor do they recognise his very Austrian accent. I know Rita Wilson has spoken about this in interviews and how embarrassed she still is by the fact that her character doesn't recognise her own husband. But honestly, I just think it's hilarious. I never grew up with this movie. I have zero nostalgia goggles for it. And yet, I actually quite enjoy it. For all its slapstick fun, it's got some really fun moments, and Phil Hartman is just great as Sleazeball Ted. It's unfortunate that Rita Wilson isn't given more to do, but wives and mothers in 90s comedies never really were. And regular listeners will know how much of a soft spot I have for Arnie, that I grew up watching many of his movies with my own dad. People genuinely love this movie, and it's thought of incredibly fondly. It feels like the Jingle All the Way Naissance is a thing, or at least I'm going to try and make it a thing. This movie, for so many years, was called a bad Christmas movie. It's not. It's a silly Christmas movie for sure, but it's actually way more Christmassy than most. What speaks to modern Christmas traditions more than workaholic parents? That one gift their child wants more than anything, and an inability to get it. Nowadays, we'd go on eBay to try and find it. Back then, they queued outside shops. It's all the same. It also perfectly summarises the true meaning of any good Christmas movie, that family and loved ones are more important, that togetherness is more than having the biggest and best toys, but mostly that Howard Langston isn't a pervert. He was just looking for a Turbo Man doll. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Jingle All the Way, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. If you want to show your support in multiple different ways, you could leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. You could tell your friends and family about this podcast, or you can find me and follow me on social media, and you can share the podcast that way. I am at Verbal Diorama. You can share posts, like posts, comment on posts. It all helps really to get the word out there and to hopefully get other people to know this podcast and know what I've been doing. I genuinely love doing this podcast, and anything you could do to help would be so appreciated. If you like this episode on Jingle All the Way, I do have many Christmas episodes in the back catalogue. However, I wanted to recommend two specifically. The first is episode 131, Krampus, which technically is a horror movie, but it also talks about consumerism and capitalism, and basically the fact that Krampus doesn't like that Christmas has turned into that, and he wants to punish people. It's a very fun movie. I like it a lot. And episode 185, The Muppet Christmas Carol, because it just is the greatest Christmas movie ever made, and I will die on that hill. As always, give me feedback. Let me know what you think. But speaking of The Muppet Christmas Carol, and a story that's been adapted many times on film, and that is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Now, nothing beats The Muppet Christmas Carol as far as adaptations of A Christmas Carol go, but as far as modern retellings go, none is quite as memorable as the story of TV executive Frank Cross, played by Bill Murray, in Richard Donner's 1988 black comedy Scrooged, which possibly is one of the most underrated Christmas movies ever made. So, join me next week for the history and legacy of Scrooged as we continue counting down to Christmas on Verbal Diorama. If you enjoy what I do for this podcast and you have some spare change and you want to support an indie podcaster who does literally all of this, everything on her own, I have no assistance, I have no one helping, I have no one doing research for me, I have to do it all by myself. And it's really hard. Sometimes it's really tough. But if you enjoy and you get something out of these episodes, and you have the means to help, you're under no obligation, of course, but there are a couple of ways you can help if you have the means to. You can make a one-off donation at verbaldiorama.com/tips, or you can subscribe to the Patreon at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon, and all money made goes back into this podcast by paying for things like software subscriptions and website hosting, and sometimes even new equipment as well. A huge thank you to the amazing patrons of this podcast. To Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Ian, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, So, Kev, Heather, Danny, Stu, Brett, Philip M, Zenos, Sean, Rhino, Philip K, Adam, Elaine, Kyle, Aaron, and Connor. If you want to get in touch, you can email verbaldiorama@gmail.com. You can also go to the website verbaldiorama.com and you can fill out the contact form. You can say hello, you can give feedback, or you can give suggestions, or you can just say, I listened to this episode and I watched the movie and this is what I thought of the movie. I would genuinely love to hear from you. You can also DM me on social media as well. I really love to hear from people and I always try to respond as quickly as possible. I'm hugely grateful to you all for your support. And finally...
Merry Christmas, Langston residents.
Hi, Ted?
Howard! Hey, buddy! How's it going out there? Everything okay?
Yeah, fine. Ted, I need to speak to Liz. Could you get...
Oh, Howard, excuse me, but your wife's cookies are out of this world.
Who told you you can eat my cookies?
I'm just helping Liz out a little in the kitchen. She's making up a storm here.
Ted, I need to speak to my wife. So could you get her on the phone, please?
I think she's in the shower, Howard. Do you want me to go check?
No! I mean, no, that's fine. On your way out, just tell her I will be a few minutes late, but you shouldn't worry.
Oh, she won't worry. I mean, I'm here and... Oh, these cookies! I gotta get the recipe from Liz.
Put that cookie down! Now!
Bye.
Movies you know, movies you don't.